Hello friends, welcome to the Gesundheit Kitchen. My name is Hans Rufert. I am I don't know how many years now, a stomach cancer survivor, no stomach, no esophagus. They tried to remove my sense of humor, but that I would not let go of. I always happy to share kind of all of my little food hacks and tips and tricks to try to get as much protein, fiber, probiotics into your guts as possible. And I know that breakfast for a lot of us post-gastrectomy patients can be the hardest meal of the day, and it is for me. And muesli is kind of one of those things. Growing up, with a name like Hans, you can sort of guess that my family heritage is German. We would eat muesli when we were visiting family, and it was always cold milk, and it was just kind of harsh and chewy. So I've sort of come back to muesli in my adult life as sort of a step up from oatmeal. So I'm going to get it kind of going here and then talk about what it is. So I have a cup of water right at the boil. I've got about a half a cup of the muesli. You can make your own. We're using a prepackaged one today that happens to be gluten-free. This one has oats, and it has pumpkin seeds and raisins. Got a lot going on there. Going to dump it into here, stir this around, and this is going to cook. I'm going to reduce the heat to a simmer. Let it cook for about 6-7 minutes, right? So you can microwave this. So if you're in a hurry and you're more about the convenience, there's a microwave method. But the process of making muesli is not that big of a deal, right? I've got just a simple small pan here. I've got it on a quick boil. I'm going to turn it down to kind of, medium-ish, maybe medium-low, say 4 out of 10. And I'm going to keep it moving every now and then. But muesli is so high in fiber. This particular one has 3 grams of protein, which we're going to jazz up a little bit. But that fiber, and I've done whole episodes talking about fiber, that fiber helps slow the motility of your gut, but it also helps even out those blood sugar ups and downs. So if you can start your day with this high fiber absorption, it'll help absorb that extra insulin that your body puts out when you eat and slow that motility down. This is going to give you energy that's going to last for hours. You're not going to have that sugar bomb breakfast where you just go straight off a cliff 2 hours later, or you get the shakes, or even worse, going into latent dumping syndrome or the reactive hypoglycemia. So anytime you can get more fiber in, it's a great way to do it. This particular mix has in there some dried raisins, some dried craisins, some dried cherries. As I mentioned, you can make your own version of this. Not all of us are gluten sensitive. I know some people are either allergic to or very sensitive to gluten. I don't have an issue with it, but this particular blend happens to be gluten-free. And if you kind of go through the list of ingredients, oats are obviously, everything on this list is gluten-free. Oats, raisins, almonds, sunflower seeds, dried cranberries, as I mentioned, rice bran. There's some brown rice chips in there. So it's got, on its own, 3 grams of protein. It's low in fat. And so all the things that normally sort of trigger that dumping syndrome, this has the things that not only don't cause it, but kind of help counteract those effects. And if you've ever experienced the latent dumping syndrome, it's not fun. It feels like you're going off a cliff. You get kind of weak and shaky. So this is one of those foods that you can kind of add to your repertoire that'll help, not necessarily negate it, but it'll lower your chances of having it. So I want to talk about different ways you can do it. Now, if you've not had hot muesli, that's obviously what I'm doing today. I would never make more than I'm going to eat in one sitting, because it does get very, very thick after you've heated it up. I'm not saying it's inedible afterwards, but it's going to be a hard thing to kind of reheat up later. So just start with a small amount, eat what you can eat. But you can do a version of, I've done overnight oats in the past on another episode. You can do overnight muesli, where you're mixing it with either a plant-based milk, if you're lactose intolerant, like a lot of us are, oat milk, rice milk, almond milk, any combination of those, flax milk, or yogurt. So just mixing it with yogurt. In fact, on this particular package, it says, try it Swiss style, which is essentially yogurt, muesli, and then they take an apple, and on a grater box, they shred the apple up and mix that into there, which is going to give it that little bit of sweetness. You can also obviously add apple afterwards if you want that little bit of crunch, and obviously a lot of fiber in an apple, both soluble and insoluble fiber. So any chance you can mix that in there. And then other add-ins like the hemp hearts, which I use quite often, ground flax seeds, just know that if you're adding ground flax seeds, they have a very binding effect. So if, I mean, not only for the actual dish, but also internally. So if the muesli is already pretty thick on its own, adding flax is going to add to that thickness. So you might have to add a little more liquid at the end there to kind of, you know, loosen that up a little bit. I'm going to turn up my heat just a tiny bit. Then the other thing that I love doing is adding nut butter. So things like almond butter, peanut butter, cashew butter. You can actually buy mixes of nut butters. We've talked about them on previous episodes that are a combination. Sometimes they're called like a power butter, where it's got multiple seeds in there. Pure protein, easy to digest for most people, depending on where you are on your journey. Now, whole nuts might be tough right after surgery. Nut butters for me were an absolute game changer and made getting that protein that I needed a lot more manageable. So I've got some creamy almond butter here, and you really are looking for ones that where the ingredients are simply, it's the almonds, a little bit of oil, little sea salt, and sometimes with sugar. Again, watch that sugar level, because you don't want to have that glycemic reaction. And as I mentioned before, you almost kind of want to think like that you're diabetic. So any foods that have a low glycemic index, and if you're not familiar with that term, look it up. That is so important that you treat your foods, again, not like being afraid of food, just be mindful of what the total glycemic index is anytime you're adding additional sugars, especially like a processed white sugar. It's going to affect your blood sugar almost immediately. So yes, the fiber in the muesli is going to slow that down, but if you're offsetting that with a lot of sugar, then you're kind of negating the benefits. So I'm going to go in with a nice big healthy spoon of this almond butter, and this is going to help kind of thicken the whole thing if it's still in this liquid form, and it's much easier to incorporate while you have a little liquid in there. Once it's already, you know, seized up a little bit and it's gotten nice and thick, it's harder to mix the almond butter into there. Set this to the side. Here, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Not up, off. Don't want to burn this. There, that's coming together beautifully. And we've just added, what, another 6 grams of protein. So we're at about, say, 9-10 grams of protein as is. I love that flavor too. Having the almond butter in there just adds another dimension. So into our serving bowl. And then I love having hemp hearts. I think sometimes I say that too fast and it sounds like one word. Hemp, H-E-M-P, hearts, which are basically the hulled seeds of the hemp plant. And they have sort of a green and kind of cream colored speckled look to them, and they have a little bit of a nutty flavor. Not so much so that it takes it in any crazy direction, but these things are high in protein. They're also omega-3s. They're just a healthy way to top off anything I can sneak it onto. I eat it pretty much almost every day. I'm somehow putting hemp into my diet, trying to get that extra fiber, that extra protein everywhere I possibly can. So just for a little bit of crunch. Now this is an organic apple, so I don't have to peel it, and a lot of the fiber is in the peel. So now some people have a hard time where the peel can get a little bit stuck, especially if you've had some dilation done in your esophagus. So if, you know, obviously find what works for you. That's the most important thing. I don't want anybody to feel like, well, you know, this looks really good, but I can't eat the apple peels, or I can't eat the nut butter, or whatever it is. The whole point of this is not to copy exactly what I'm doing. Take it, make it your own. All of this is sort of trial and error, and I hate to say that, but our engines might be similar. They're highly redacted, but it's going to be such a sort of a little bit of precision work that you're going to have to do to find out what works for your individual situation. I spent 7 years of my life with half a stomach and half an esophagus. I now have neither. They've had both removed, and so I've had to adjust along the years what I can eat. And it's a constant, you know, I don't want to say struggle, but it's a constant challenge to get that maximum nutrition, and without getting bored, without feeling like I'm just eating the same thing over and over again. So this is a great way to start the day on a cold evening. Even you can't think of what you want to eat, whip up some muesli. It's such an easy thing. You can use, as I mentioned, the plant-based dairy-free milk substitutes. Just be careful when you're heating those up. A lot of those don't like to come to a boil. Like usually it'll say that they're heat-proof or not. So typically what I'll do is I'll make the muesli with water, and then I might thin it back down a little bit with some of those plant alternative milk products, which I really enjoy. So grab yourself a bag, and then once you're hooked on muesli, like I think you will be, feel free to create. Be a little adventurous with it, but always take baby steps towards anything new you're adding to your diet, because there can always be a little bit of a shift there. I always look forward to spending some time with you in the kitchen. If you have questions, please feel free to send those in. Take care of yourself, or if you're the caregiver, take care of your loved one, and I look forward to seeing you next time.